Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Nacho Tuesday. And today I have Nate and Tom here with SpendHound. And without further ado, we'd love if you could introduce both of yourselves and what you guys do over there at SpendHound.
Cool.
Nate,
yeah, happy to start.
First?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So happy to be here. My name's Nate. I'm a procurement manager with SpendHound. I've been with SpendHound since January of 2024 when we were just about 30, 40 customers at the time. So it's been quite a wild ride to where we are now. My background is entirely procurement and sales. So I've been in the space for a long time, benchmarking contracts, and yeah, happy to be here and on this webinar.
Cool. Tom Ruello, I'm VP of Sales for SpendHound, so oversees sort of all of our sales and partnership motion. A bit of background around myself. I've worked with Yipper Data for roughly 10 years, then moved over to the SpendHound side of the business about 2.5 years ago when we were very much in our infancy. You know, there was just 3 or 4 of us really launching SpendHound. As Nate mentioned, you know, even beginning of 2024, we had sort of 30, 40 customers. At the time, there was probably only about 10 or 15 people working on SpendHound. Today, we are now at 1,000 customers, adding 50 plus new customers a month. And, you know, we have a team of over 100 people. So a lot of growth in the last 2 years.
Oh, good.
Yeah, a little bit about SpendHound. You sort of asked as well. So a little bit about SpendHound. So SpendHound, you can think of it as we help companies keep track of and manage their software spend. So we provide a fully automated dashboard that allows companies to see what all of their software spend is, when the renewal dates are coming up and sending reminders ahead of that, and then a whole bunch of mechanisms to optimize that spend. One of the best and most effective mechanisms to optimize that spend is through our benchmarking data. As I mentioned, we have north of 1,000 customers now. And so across those customers, we can see what best in market rates look like for literally thousands of different tools. And then we have a team of people like Nate who will help support you to sort of negotiate better rates across those deals. And so that's what we do, and excited to chat through some of the insights we're seeing.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of people, you know, if you don't know what you don't know, right? So the fact that you guys are benchmarking all that gives people a better negotiating position to come from. So today we're going to be talking about benchmarking, pricing. So I guess starting from that, like what would be a fair market price for SaaS, and what does that actually mean in 2026?
Yeah, happy to take this one. Fair market price for SaaS in 2026. There's really 2 ways that we measure this. You know, my team, our first job is first to look at what a fair price is based on your product mix, your quantities, the size of your company relative to other companies that have the same product mix and quantities. Are you paying a fair price? So looking at your rates and making sure, you know, for everything that you have on this contract, you are in line with what we would expect based on other companies that are also purchasing to this extent. The second piece we look at it is going to be value, right? So what kind of value is this tool going to bring internally? Can we justify the cost based on the value to really make sure that before you make an investment in a piece of SaaS that you are going to be paying a price that is both fair from a market standard perspective, but also fair from a value perspective for what you're going to receive internally.
Great. Do you guys have any visuals that you want to cover for anybody today?
I have a visual. I want to go into that just because this is an example of when you are not receiving fair pricing.
AKA most people.
Yes, unfortunately, like a lot of companies that come to SpendHound, especially in the early stages when we do benchmarking, we'll find a lot of contracts where you are not receiving good pricing. So in this case, we saw a customer that was paying way more than they should for their HubSpot contract. As you can see, whenever we look at someone's contract, we're first looking at total price, which is what you see on this screen. And you can see we mark this as worst in class because based on their size and product mix, they were paying way more than they should be, almost 30,000 more than what we've seen on the other end of the scale, about 20,000 more than we've seen on average, which was a bit shocking. And then Andy, if you go to the next page.
Absolutely.
You'll see what we do next is we look at each product, because now I want to know, okay, now I already know that you're inflated for what you should be paying. And then looking at each product, let's see if we can find, is it just based off of one product? Do you have some products that are average or favorable? In this case, everything was pretty much in the red. They were essentially only receiving a small discount for an annual commitment. They received no volume-based incentives. So we looked at other agreements with lesser volume. They were paying the same rate. To add insult to injury, they actually grew this contract throughout their renewal term. HubSpot still did not bring any additional concessions to the table, which this was, again, shocking to see. We were able to help them negotiate this to a much more favorable rate and get those down. And this is exactly why we want to look at, are you paying a fair price? Because a lot of the times, we catch this one tool in your stack where you're, in this case, worst in class. There's going to be more hidden in there. And that's exactly what we're trying to find.
Great. And do you guys provide a service where you actively negotiate for the clients, right, on their behalf as well? Or you do more than just the benchmarking, right?
We do. Yeah. So from the negotiation side of things, we'll sit in your corner. So essentially what we're doing is we're looking at what levers can you use. So for the vendor, we want to know vendor specific. So for HubSpot, you can see that comparable agreement up there. That second number, 476, this is telling you we have 476 customers using HubSpot. The first number, 45, that's how many contracts fit your product mix and total spend. So when we have that much data on a vendor, we can give you levers and say, hey, we need to push on this price. We knew HubSpot very well. We know how to negotiate this at this level. Here's the levers that we should consider using. And we'll meet with the company. We want to understand, again, were there things like product growth? Are you thinking of adding even more products? Are you having issues with the service? Are we looking at multi-year? Any number of levers will help craft that entire negotiation strategy. We can write email templates on your behalf. Ultimately, we'll sit in your corner as this deal progresses until we can get you to a more favorable rate, using data along the way and making sure you know exactly how you should negotiate this contract.
Great. So how much pricing power do vendors really have, especially considering all the new AI tools coming out there and a lot of other competitors flooding the market today? Would you say it's more beneficial, I guess, for the buyers these days?
It really depends on the company, because with that tightening cycle in 2022 through 2025, we saw large companies, when you think of like the Salesforce, LinkedIn's, Microsoft, they still have a lot of power. That in that case, it still technically is a seller's market. We saw them consistently raise prices year over year with minimal impact to churn, right? So when we're looking at players like that, you still are going to have some power, just not as much as I think a lot of companies would want to have. When we think of companies more like HubSpot, Gong, SalesLoft, OneTrust, like companies more in the middle tier space, and especially when we move into niche vendors, it is becoming more of a seller's market. More of a buyer's market, purely because there is so much competition in that space, and companies now know, for one initiative, there's probably 20 plus tools that you can use. You do not need to stick with a vendor. Moving to a competitor is a real risk for a lot of companies, and they're starting to feel that. They're seeing more competitive bids. So it is, right now the buyer does have more power when you're in that middle tier. But again, if you move up to the bigger tier, again, companies like Salesforce, still going to be a little bit of a seller's market there for those companies.
And what about for SMBs? They might not, they're not like a large enterprise company coming in with thousands of seats. What kind of tips would you offer for them in terms of how they could better negotiate with some of these larger companies, perhaps?
It can be easier in that capacity. My biggest tip in that case is approach them early. Don't wait until you're a month or 2 months before the renewal, especially for a tool like Salesforce, where even at a smaller scale, they know it takes a long time to rip and replace a Salesforce and find a viable alternative. Give yourself minimum 3 months for a tool like that. I would honestly say start 6 months, let them see it coming. You want to give yourself that runway, because if you don't, the vendor is going to be able to essentially call the bluff. If I approach Salesforce a month before my renewal, even if I'm only using 20 seats, and tell them, hey, we're thinking of moving to a competitor, more than likely they're going to call that, and they're not going to take that seriously as a lever that we can use to negotiate. So give yourself time. Also know your story and know the power of your logo, and be able to sell that to the vendor. If you're not getting the value that you feel like you should from a tool, make sure you're able to paint that picture. Like, where is your company going in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Like, what is going to happen to your logo? What are you trying to do? And be able to sell like, hey, we're here right now, but our goal is to grow to X with you guys. And if you're not getting value, measure that internally, put numbers on paper, and be able to share that story with the vendor. So now not only are you getting to them ahead of time with enough runway, you're also able to say, here's exactly why we need to renegotiate, because this is what we're not getting from your tool that we need to get.
That's great. So is there any specific types of tools that you might have a better negotiating position with, like say CRM tools as opposed to, cloud hosting type tools? What kind of suggestions do you have there?
Yeah, that becomes very very niche. Depending on the vendor, I wouldn't say there's one category we're going to have more or less. I will say cloud tools probably generally a little less. CRMs, yeah, I mean it's not the broadest market when you think of realistic CRMs for a company to use. Still options. When you move into spaces like AI, there are going to be a lot of options. You're going to have a lot of leverage there. So it really becomes situational for the company, what kind of tool you're using, what your use case is to really determine how much leverage are you going to have when negotiating, how much power are you going to have when negotiating with that vendor, to kind of figure out what kind of position you'll be in.
And there's just like different competitive dynamics across different markets. And so, for instance, we see like SalesLoft, Outreach, Gong, like they're all competing really hard and are likely to kind of change on pricing, similar to kind of project management tools with, Asanas, Mondays, Notions, etc. They're all competing for the same space, and they're pretty, the switching costs are pretty low. And so when there's high competition, there's a lot more leverage to negotiate.
Yeah, and the switching costs are low. That's a great point that you just brought up there. And it probably helps if you come to the negotiation with a couple tools in mind already, very well versed and perhaps what kind of features and pricing they have, so you could bring that up in the negotiation as well.
100%. We can provide that. You don't always want to go and do a whole bunch of demos with competitors out there to know what the prices are. It's a lot of wasted time. We can help with that. We can tell you like how viable are these as alternate options, what is the relative cost, and then what's the talk track you can use to show that you are genuinely looking at other options and how to then use that in your favor to negotiate a better rate.
That's great. Yeah, why reinvent the wheel when you guys already do it for them? So
yeah.
I guess which SaaS categories do you think are the most overpriced today, or SaaS tools for that matter?
Yeah, I'll take that. Overpriced. I mean, it really goes back to the first point. I wouldn't say there's one category that's necessarily overpriced. If I had to put my finger on one, generally we're going to default to AI, and not that AI is overpriced, it's that it's underutilized. A lot of companies are tacking on AI to seats where the AI add-on can be a premium of 30 to 110% of the base per seat cost. So you're paying a lot more, but you're not realizing the value because it's either not being used and becoming shelfware, or if it's usage based, you start hitting usage spikes, you're not monitoring it, you're paying way more than you need to. So AI is a pretty large culprit. Again, not that the tool or the AI itself is overpriced. It's just that companies are not properly utilizing it. So they wind up spending way more than they need to. Other cases, like if we move into GTM tools, project management tools, things of that nature, that becomes more supplier and company specific. Again, just understanding how are you using the tool. If it's seat based, making sure you're monitoring, am I using all of my seats? Do I have shelfware that we're paying for? Because a lot of the companies, when they come in, will find that they might be paying for 100 seats, but only half of those are being used. So it's like, why are we paying for 50 seats that are just sitting there becoming unused? Usage based companies, we're seeing them pay way more than they need to. They're not catching overages, and they don't realize in their contract there is a large premium on overages. So those are a couple things to be aware of. So as far as category goes, hard to pinpoint one. AI would be high on my list. The other categories, it really becomes more how are you using the tool internally, and are you getting the value that you need to get out of the tool?
And I feel like a lot of people are just really excited to try AI tools, that they're not as competent when it comes to like what they're actually spending on it. They don't look at it until later. They're just really giddy to try any sort of AI tool that comes out there. Do you see any sort of difference in the way that AI tools are priced compared to SaaS tools? Do you see more like usage-based pricing, or what other kind of differences do you see there that you can compare with, legacy SaaS companies, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, they followed a pretty similar trend. I mean, the three typical models we see for AI, well, it used to be two. It's seat based and usage based. We're now seeing hybrid as well, so seats plus usage, which can help mitigate some risk and in some cases save on the cost front. But in that model, it's really similar to a lot of legacy SaaS contracts. I think the way that usage-based works in AI is a little bit different. So not necessarily too far off of legacy SaaS seats or pricing models. It's just how you use the tool, and that hybrid model is a little more unique to the AI usage.
Yep. So I guess what is a healthy percentage of revenue to spend on SaaS if you're at a pre-seed, seed, or Series A, or even Series B level? What would you think about that, Tom?
Yeah, I can take this one. To think of it as like a percentage of revenue might be like the wrong way to think about it. I mean, we, like I have worked with some very large companies and they will start to think about it at that point. For them, they might just be looking for like a few percentage of their overall revenue. And I've spoken with, PE-backed companies and that's what they're looking for. At the earlier stage, it's really about like what sort of, how are you using technology to grow? We've looked across our client base and we've seen that for very early stage companies, it's really on more of an employee basis. And so for very early stage companies, the median is around like $20,000 of sort of SaaS and cloud spend per person. And then that trends down as companies get larger, closer to like 10 to 15,000. With that said, even within those numbers, there's huge variability. And so like there's some like super AI heavy companies where they're literally spending $100,000 per person on technology. They might be running super lean teams, but they're spending a ton of money on SaaS, AI tokens, cloud compute. And so it really is based on your business, but it's definitely a factor to keep in mind. Like if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to add employees, guess what? There's going to be a lot of technology spend associated with that.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that point. You mentioned 20,000 or even 10,000 at scale, which is a smaller number, but still huge nonetheless. You're spending a large percentage of the employee's salary on the technology that they use. So just consider that as well. It could be 10, 20, 30% of what you're actually paying that employee in terms of salary. So it's a huge cost center if you think about it that way.
For sure. Yeah, and that's why it's so important. I mean, for most of the companies we work with, is like salary and wages is by far the number one cost. Technology is not far behind and often where there's some of the most leverage.
Yeah, that's why even saving a couple percentage points even can make a huge difference in terms of how much money you're wasting on your SaaS spend.
Yep.
So I'd love if you could reiterate for founders out there that are listening today, again, the data that they can bring to the table in terms of how they could better negotiate with the vendors. Just want to really hit that point again, if you can, because I think, especially now with more of an economic crunch happening, and there's still a liquidity crunch too with the interest rates being really high. I feel like now is the time that companies should be really trying to cut costs as much as they can without losing headcount, of course. So any details that you can give founders to give them a better negotiating position, would love to hear it.
Yeah, I think, I go back for founders, the big thing is know your story and know how you're going to sell your story, right? Because when you come in and you want to purchase software, right, especially if you're, seed or pre-seed or earlier or whatever stage you're at, understand where your logo is going to go and be able to sell that story to the vendor, right? Because even if we're just coming in and purchasing, 10 or 20 seats now, let them know by the years 2, 3, 4 and beyond, our goal is to get to 100, then 200, then 500 seats. And here's why my logo should matter to you. So know the value of your company, know the value of your worth, right? Like a initial contract, it's a partnership, right? So be able to treat it as such. So I think being able to sell your story is number one. The other piece, early stage companies as a founder, it can be very volatile. Tools are going to change all the time. Make sure the vendor knows it is a competitive bid. Never enter a negotiation and let that vendor know you are my vendor of choice. I'm going with you. You should keep that card close to your chest all the way until the end. Let them know, like, hey, we are a young company. This is a big initiative for us. We're looking at you, but we're also looking at these 3 or 4 other vendors, which that's exactly where SpendHound would come in, because we would be able to tell you, hey, if you're looking at them, you should seriously consider these 3 or 4 other players in the market because they fit what you're looking for based on your wants, your needs. They're going to be a perfect tool for you. So when you enter that conversation, sell your story, but also sell the competitive bid and let them know, like, hey, because of where we are and because we're early, we need you to work with us on pricing. Come in with a set budget in mind. Again, SpendHound, we can tell you what a realistic budget would be for this tool based on what you want to purchase. Stick to your guns on that and let them know, hey, whatever company can work with me now and be a partner up front, our plan is to grow. That is our, the ultimate goal with this purchase is to have a tool that can grow with us. So here's what our value is going to be in the next couple of years. Here's why you should want to partner with us, and just really hold firm on that. So again, know the value, keep it competitive, and give yourself runway too. Very similar to what you should do in renegotiating a renewal. Give yourself, 3 months, 6 months, enough time where if you have to walk away temporarily, you're able to do that. Don't come when you're in a crunch and you have to purchase a tool within a week or 2 weeks, because if you put yourself in that small amount of time, you're going to give the vendor way more power than they should have.
Yeah, and always be willing to walk away from the deal, right?
Absolutely. Yep, that's a huge one.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing here too is that you're not just selling a feel-good story. You're coming with actual data. That's really what a SpendHound really offers. A lot of people really aren't. They're just coming with the story like, "Hey, can I get a discount? You know, I promise you, my company's going to get bigger, and you guys are going to make a lot of money." It's good to be able to benchmark that and be able to show that you have looked at alternatives. You are coming as an educated decision maker as well. Yeah. So for anybody interested in SpendHound, by the way, there's a $500 gift card if you guys want to try it out. Adam from Yipit Data is going to drop that into the LinkedIn channel. You could also grab it today in NachoNacho's marketplace, but they'll give you $500 if you're a qualified buyer, of course, and you check them out today. Sounds like anybody that's actually going to be renegotiating their contracts should definitely be using you guys. So I'm glad that we talked about that today. I guess how should startups think about usage-based versus seat-based pricing? It sounds like the usage-based could really get out of control and out of hand quickly. Where do you see the biggest risks with either form of those pricing models?
Yeah, biggest risk with usage base is going to be spikes in usage. Usage base makes the most sense if the product is if it's like an API or an infrastructure component. So if we think about like LLMs, vector DBs, workflow automations, typically usage base is going to make sense. If it's something that's going to scale with business volume, again, tickets, messages, calls, documents, et cetera, and you want a low fixed cost early and are okay with some variability, usage makes sense. But yeah, bill shock is very real, right? From spikes, and also inefficient prompts or workflows are not being caught. You also want to see if the vendor is tracking activity based on tokens other than value, or instead of value, like tasks completed. The spikes in usage can be real. Highly recommend having some level of internal governance. A lot of good companies are going to be they'll allow you to set caps. They'll set up alerts. Datadog's a very good example of this. So you want to make sure you have something in place. Seat-based gives you more predictability on budget. This is really good if humans are going to be your primary users, like sales teams, analysts, recruiters. If the AI is more assistive, like think of like Copilot features, and the value is more tied to having access versus, like how many calls you're making. Seat-based makes sense. What you do want to watch for, again, shelfware is the big one with this. We see a lot of companies, they're told that they need to add AI to all of their seats, and it's going to be this premium, but it's going to be the best thing in the world. And they'll realize that, hey, we're paying for 100 seats. I have 20 employees that are actually using the AI. So we have 80 seats that we're essentially, at that point, you're just paying an AI tax, which is not beneficial to anyone. You're paying way more than you need to. There are also companies we're seeing that with seat-based models, they'll have a fair use clause that can quietly become usage-based. So essentially, if your seats start using X level of usage, they move you inevitably to a usage model, which then you have the bill shock and then everything changes. So it's another good thing to watch out for. And that's also where we come in, because when we look at seat-based and usage-based, we're looking for what clauses do they have in there? Are you going to shift to a usage model at some point? And if you're signing for usage, what are you paying for overages? Do we have caps? Is there governance? Are there alerts? How can we help you make sure that you're on the best model? And if you're looking at one and it's not going to be beneficial, we can make that recommendation and tell you why you should look at seat versus usage.
So is there any other gotchas or gimmicks that you would recommend founders look out for? You mentioned like the AI add-ons and like features that they're probably not going to use, which sound cool, but do you actually use them, get your value out of them? Is there any other gimmicks that you see kind of baked into some of these subscription programs or some of these offerings that SaaS or AI companies have that people should look out for so they don't end up paying for something they don't need?
Yeah, a lot of the sneaky ones. The AI features is probably the big one. That seat-based, having clauses where if you use X amount, some of them can be very low. Like it's very realistic. You're going to hit that threshold. They're going to move you to usage-based. Pretty big gotcha. One of the common ones, especially in competitive markets, a lot of companies will offer very, very strong discounts for year one, and they'll sneak a tiny clause in there that basically says after year one, all of these discounts are going to wipe. We're going to move you back to essentially list price. I've even had companies that this cannot happen, and it's very easy to call out, but they'll actually put them above list price because then they'll apply a 5 or 7% year over year uplift. Yeah, it's shocking. And when we catch a vendor doing that, they cannot, especially if their pricing is publicly advertised, but it does happen. And if you don't catch it, and a lot of companies don't, it just auto renews. You can catch yourself paying more than list price because you didn't see that. Your discount goes away. There's an uplift in year 2. All of our incentives are just completely gone. Now we're paying way too much. The other sneaky clauses, again, with the usage base is overages. So if you go over your allotted amount, you might find that you're paying I've seen overages where you're paying a 50% or more premium on what you contracted for. So not only will you get bill shock because we've gone over, but also, oh my goodness, these overages, we paid a 80% premium on our base rate. Now your bill shock becomes even more concerning, especially if you're locked into a 12 or 24 month contract, because typically vendors will not renegotiate that.
I mean, the other one is auto renewal terms. We see them be fairly egregious at times, where you're like considering, should we renew this thing? Should we not? You reach out and you're like, oh no, guess what? Great news, you've already renewed. We're sending you the invoice. And so particularly for younger companies, you're testing out tools and you're open to switching. If you get auto renewed 60, 90 days out and you didn't even know about that, you're often caught paying a bill, and they're usually pretty ruthless about those. You're caught paying a bill for something that maybe you're not even using anymore.
Yeah, that could really hurt your startup, especially if you're pretty tight on funding there. And you guys do the benchmarking for the companies that don't have public pricing. So that's another advantage with SpendHound, right? Where you guys are keeping track of this stuff all the time. So while you might be shopping for software and their list prices might not be advertised publicly, you guys are able to come to the table with that level of intel, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, we barely use public pricing because ultimately that's just something they put on their website. The real price they charge is in the contracts of all of their customers, and we work with 1,000+ companies, and so we see real pricing of what people are actually paying.
Oh wow, that's smart. So I guess the big question is AI actually saving money and increasing productivity, or is it compressing the costs for subscriptions and technology costs within an organization, or is it increasing the cost? It sounds like there's a little bit of both happening here.
It's a little bit of both. Right. I think the long-term goal of AI is to compress costs. Right now, what we're really seeing happen with AI, it will help consolidate your stack, because you might have a tool that you can essentially wrap 3 tools into one product using AI. The cost is essentially net neutral, right? Because what we're seeing is you're replacing 3 tools into one, but your cost is essentially the same with the AI, with the overages, with the way that they're pricing their models. So we're not seeing so much of a shift where your spend is going down. We're seeing a consolidation in the amount of tools, but your net spend is essentially going to be the same. That is, of course, as long as you have a tool like SpendHound, you're avoiding overages, you're not paying a premium for seats. Otherwise, you could have bill shock across the entire stack, especially knowing how much vendors are trying to charge for add-on AI features, whether you need them or not.
And for the big question of the day too, which I don't know if you follow the stock market and everybody's selling all the software companies, but is AI going to kill SaaS, or do you see them commingling and surviving together?
Maybe I could take this, because we actually sell a lot of data to kind of investment firms. So it's kind of funny because the headlines are telling you that SaaS is dead and these companies are getting killed. The reality is we're not seeing that yet, because we can actually see across our data how these SaaS companies are performing. But for the most part, they're still growing. They're still adding more clients. And so is that, as we sort of start to approach some of those renewal cycles, we might see a bit more of that. And certainly there's little segments of the market where there's a lot of pressure on them. And frankly, that can be a nice negotiation tactic. But from what we're seeing, people are still buying SaaS. They're testing out AI, but they're still buying SaaS. They're renewing, they're spending more money with SaaS tools over time.
That's great to hear. So I guess where can people learn more about SpendHound and pick up your services today? And I guess what are some key takeaways that you'd like people to walk away from with the webinar today, and considering why they should go with SpendHound?
Yeah, I mean, go to spendhound.com, check out our website, go to the NachoNacho partner page. You'll get a $500 gift card for signing up. The nice thing about SpendHound is for companies under 1,000 employees, it's 100% free. You don't pay a cent, and you keep every cent of savings that you get from using our services, both the platform as well as the negotiation and benchmarking. For companies over 1,000 employees, it's just $10K a year flat fee. We're building a lot of stuff. As I mentioned, we only launched SpendHound just over 2 years ago. In that time, we've built one of the best SaaS management platforms on the market and one of the fastest growing. We're going to be launching a ton of AI features over the next couple of months. So we already use a lot of AI with the way we clean and aggregate our data. We're going to be launching in-platform benchmarking, so you can sort of see real time how your pricing compares. We'll be rolling out a negotiation agent that essentially acts like a ChatGPT functionality, where you can use that for negotiation purposes, as well as sort of the ability to benchmark your entire tech stack, so you can see exactly how your pricing compares to the overall market. So just a lot of new AI functionality that's going to allow teams to be more efficient, more effective managing their overall tech stack.
That's great. Well, very convincing. I think we'll probably have to look into it ourselves. So for anybody watching today, you definitely need to be using SpendHound if you want to save a bunch of money. If your contracts are coming due pretty soon, sounds like the cost that they have is very trivial. You'll save a lot more than you actually spend on the service. Plus, you get a $500 gift card, which is kind of a nice little additional bonus here. Really appreciate you guys coming on today. It was a very insightful interview. A lot of great things I got to think about as well coming out of this interview. Again, thank you, Nate and Tom. Go to spendhound.com for anybody watching this and check him out today. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Andy.
it. Yeah, bye.